gearing up for the midterm elections this November. Tonight, we're focusing on a couple of propositions that maybe aren't getting as much attention as some of the others, but nevertheless, they are still on your ballot. That's Props 31 and 28. So here to help us break those down, we have Assemblyman Chad Mays, NBC Palm Springs political analyst, here in studio with us. Thanks for joining us once again.
Hey, Olivia, how are you tonight? I've moved up. Now I'm the political analyst.
Yes.
I've moved from about to be former assembly member to political analyst. I like this.
We don't just hand those titles out to anybody.
Well, that's good. Well, that's great. That's good.
All right. Well, we are getting right into it tonight. We're starting with Prop 31. Now, it's designed to uphold the ban on flavored tobacco products. We've got the text for you there. I've seen this advertised a lot as a way to protect our children, who are typically the target of maybe ads or commercials from flavored tobacco. Tell us, how is Prop 31 currently polling?
Well, looks like there's support. Actually, there's a Berkeley IGS poll that just came out today that said north of 50%. It was 57% actually are in support of Prop 31. So let's talk a little bit about what this is and how we actually got to this. Well, back in 2020 in the legislature, in fact, I remember this bill very well. It was SB 793 that came before. It actually came before the Assembly Health Committee. There was quite a bit of debate about this at the time, and the idea was, are we going to be able to ban tobacco? Now, most of the legislature, in fact, most of the public is not supportive of tobacco. We know of the health impacts of tobacco, and a lot of us, of course, don't like the smell of it and other things as well. The question, of course, is should we ban flavored tobacco products in California? It was actually a pretty tight vote, but it did get out of the legislature. After it got out of the legislature, it was signed by the governor. Then there was some opponents of that bill that ended up qualifying a measure, an initiative. That's why this is before us. So they did a referenda to bring this to the voters, let the voters to decide. There's quite a bit of money being supportive of this proposition. Not a whole lot of money being spent against the initiative. So what this proposition does, it would ban flavored products, menthol in particular, for cigarettes, so any flavored cigarettes, and it'll also ban any flavored vaping, what we know as vaping, any of the electronic cigarettes as well.
So we've talked about the health issues of Prop 31. Now, if we look at probably the funding behind it, the fiscal effect, we know sales tax from tobacco-flavored products raises about $100 million for the state in a year, and it goes to things like health care or child services. If this was to be no on Prop 31, if that was to go through, would that affect some of those state programs that sales tax ends up supporting?
Of course, $100 million to most people sounds like an awful lot of money. In the grand scheme of a budget of almost $300 billion, $100 million is not that much. It's not going to have that much of an impact on state programs. So the question is, do you want to be able to ban flavored tobacco products? You should vote yes. If you don't, you want to keep the law as it's always been in California, then you would vote no.
All right, plain and simple. That's Prop 31 there. We're going to transition over to Prop 28. And if you've gotten your official voter ballot, your voter information guide that's been sent to you by the state, you may notice when you flip through on Prop 28, which is about arts and music funding in schools, that there is no official argument for Prop 28 that has been submitted to the state. You see the text there? It's the only prop this year that has no argument against it. My question for you is, does this mean there officially is no argument against it? Does this mean this is automatically going to pass, or are there people who are against adding in additional funding for arts for school?
Well, I don't think you could say, but there's going to be some folks that are going to vote no on this. So are there people that are opposed to that? I'm sure that there is. But I do think there's broad-based support for this measure. In fact, most of the public polling isn't even asking this question, because I think there's this understanding that there is broad-based support for Prop 28. What this will do is it'll take 1% of the Prop 98 funds and say this money is going to be spent on arts and on music. And you're going to have to, of that 1%, 80% of it is going to have to go towards hiring new teachers to be able to provide that instruction for our kids at public school. There is broad-based support on this. My guess is this probably gets in the high 70s, but that would be my guess.
We have seen a lot of, like, Dr. Dre and Sylvester Stallone are really backing this. I think arts in school in general has been a conversation that's been going on for years now, where they're saying this needs to be increased. Now, my question, it says it will increase the state's cost by $1 billion, and for Prop 28, side is saying that it wouldn't raise any state taxes. Where does the funding for this prop come from?
So it's 1% of the Prop 98 amount. It's $110 billion is that current Prop 98. So this will be, it's going to be 1%. It's going to come out of other general fund, the general fund. Again, this year we've had huge surpluses, and so we start throwing big numbers around, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. You get to real money at some point in time. But 1% of the Prop 98 is not going to be problematic for the state budget.
Okay, great. So we've covered 28 and 31 already tonight. Now, last week we touched on the gambling propositions, 26 and 27, and since then we've seen kind of some changes in the funding for these. The San Francisco Chronicle said that the Yes on 27 team actually has no statewide TV spots slated for the month of October. What does this mean for 26 and 27 that we're seeing maybe some funding, some advertising really declining?
Well, I think that they've done their own polling and seeing that there's not a whole lot of support for either measure. Again, Berkeley IGS in their poll this morning said that Prop 26 had about 31% of support, and 42% in opposition, 31% in support. Prop 27, it was actually 27% in support. So the numbers just really aren't there for either of these measures. As a reminder, Prop 26 would allow for sports wagering in person in tribal casinos and the 4 racetracks in California. Prop 27 would allow it on the internet, so on your iPhone, your tablets, sitting from the comfort of your couch, and both of those look like they're not getting a whole lot of support by the people of California.
I think it's been a little surprising to some people to see how low the support is there. But those are some of the major props so far on the ballot. Now on Thursday, we'll be discussing Prop 1. That is the last prop that we have for this upcoming election. But then after that, we'll get to some of the races that are on the ballot. So every Tuesday and Thursday, Assemblyman Chad Mays will be here. We thank you for your conversation tonight, for helping us get through all of these propositions, and for clearing up some of the wording that can be very confusing to some voters out there. So we'll have the next segment coming up on Thursday, but that does it for us tonight. We'll be right back after this break.